What's going on, everyone? Tanner here, and welcome back to yet another terrarium update. Today we're going to be doing the 3-month update on the levitating terrarium here, and we're also going to be doing a little bit of maintenance. Before we get into the update here, I want to take the terrarium off of this base here and set it onto this little Dixie cup. Now the reason I did that was just so it wasn't moving around whenever we were doing maintenance, and also so if I don't bumper it doesn't go flying on the floor. And a lot of people even said, you know, whenever the electricity goes out you're screwed because it's going to fall on the floor. I actually don't keep it on this base except to show it in pictures or on video. I always just keep it in this little cup on my windowsill, so it's not actually levitating at all times. I also want to point out real quick that the base actually kept its color really well. If you remember, these are just leaves and things that I attached to a piece of paper and then covered them in some Mod Podge. I wasn't too confident that they would keep the green for very long, but they actually did pretty well, so we'll see if it continues up until the next update and indefinitely, really. So let's set this aside. Now then, in order to show you what's really going on in here, I'm going to have to take the lid off here because it's really hard to see with all of those reflections. So why don't we go ahead and take a closer look. Just like the terrarium from the other week, the first thing that you'll probably notice is there's just a ton of growth going on in here. And of course we have several different species of moss. We have some haircap moss here in the middle. We also have some haircap moss here on the back and here as well. We also have some hypnomoss, more hypnomoss here, a little bit of star moss, and even some badge moss in the back here. And I also see a little strand of sphagnum moss, which we're going to have to pull out because it doesn't really fit the aesthetic that I want to go for here. But overall it's doing really well. I think that the hardscape definitely looks really nice with all this moss growing in. Some of the stuff in the back we really got to trim up. And I also noticed this little sort of orange stringy fungus growing on the haircap moss especially, so we're gonna have to try to remove some of that and maybe add a few more springtails in here just so that way we don't really have any issues with that killing off the moss. But overall it looks like it's doing really well, and I think it's about time that we do a little bit of maintenance here. The first thing I'm gonna do is try to remove as much of this little orange sort of stringy fungi that I can, and I believe that it is a fungi. It doesn't really seem like it's part of the mosses here, so I'm going to try to remove as much of it as I can. Issues with mold by far are one of the questions I get most down in the comments, and it does happen from time to time. Usually it's white and stringy. In this case it's orange and stringy, but this is usually about how it's going to look. And one of the best things to do is just to come into your terrarium and manually remove them with your tweezers, and just do that over time, and eventually it will just kind of stop showing up. You can also just do a waiting game and wait for it to go away. 9 times out of 10 it will. Occasionally it won't, and it will actually kill off your terrarium. Obviously you don't want that to happen, so I recommend just getting in there and trying to do something about it. I feel like I pretty much removed whatever I could with tweezers here. So what I'll do is I'll just trim some of these sections off with my aquascape scissors here. As you can see, they're curved, and it makes it easy to just trim like this and take it away. I'm gonna be generous with how much I trim off here just because we do have this issue with the mold or fungi, so I'd rather just get it out of the way now and not have potential issues with it down the road. And obviously this moss, it's just gonna grow back in no time, so I'm not really too concerned about trimming too much of it off here. So here's all of what I trimmed up, and I kind of stopped because I feel like this orange is actually part of the haircap moss itself, because I don't really see it anywhere else in the terrarium. It's not on any of the other mosses, and I'm just suspicious that this is actually a part of it. So I'm going to stop trimming it and just leave it, and we'll see what happens. If I notice that it's causing problems down the road prior to the next update, then I'll go in here and address it, but I really don't think that it is a fungus or mold after all. So here's how the terrarium looks after trimming. It might not look as cool as it just did a little bit ago, but of course it's going to grow back. And I've had this open for a little while now, so I can tell it's kind of getting dried out. So why don't we go ahead and spray it down a little bit and get some water back in there. As always, I've got my trusty sprayer here full of dechlorinated water. And I'm just going to go in here and lightly spray. No need to overdo it, just enough to give the mosses a good spray. Alright, by now you guys got to know the drill. We're going to add some springtails back into here before we close it up. Now, I'm sure there's some in here from whenever we originally did the build, but I just want to add some more on the off chance that that was some mold. So, we'll just add a little bit from our master culture here. Well, I wanted to get some close-up shots of the springtails in here, but I honestly don't see any of them. I'm not sure where they went. They must have went straight down into the false bottom, which is totally fine. So why don't we go ahead and close this thing off. And that's going to do it for today's terrarium update. Overall, I think this terrarium's looking really good. I like the progress of it, and I can't wait to see how it looks in another 3-6 months, maybe a year from now. I just think it's going to keep looking better and better, especially because of that hardscape. I think that really ties into all the textures of the moss quite well. So again, I can't wait to see it in a future update. And again, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I apologize if it was a little bit on the short end. I'm not feeling so well right now. I have some issues going on with my sinus. Should be feeling better in a few days. So all that aside, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you next time.